Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I hope everybody can hear me. I'll try to speak up. Again, my name is Phil Whitelock. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, President and Director of the Michigan War Dog Memorial. And with me today, I have my wife. My wife has been supporting me for the last 7 years on this mission that I've been on. In the last year or so, she retired, so I gave her something to do.
He's in trouble.
And I even made her vice president. But no, she's been a great help, and as you well know, you need the support. So she's been coming along. Barbara, raise your hand. Also with me is K9 Ziva. K9 Ziva is my personal dog. She goes with me when we put on a presentation. She comes as a representative of the military dogs past and present. She's also wearing a combat harness, just to give you an idea just what it looks like when they go out in the front lines. So when they go on duty. So before I start in my little talk, which we're going to talk about the history of the war dogs and the development of the Michigan War Dog Memorial, I want to get everybody in a kind of a patriotic mood. So I got a little tape, DVD here I want to play. So just give me a minute to crank this thing up. She told me how to work it a minute ago. Let's see if I can retain it.
Holding the grip of oppression, I fought for my liberty. I paid with the blood of my people. Freedom has never been free. Now my door's always open to dreamers and friends. When I'm attacked, I protect and defend, because my name is America. I stand proud and free. My name is America. Don't tread on me. I cannot be broken. I cannot be shamed. If you hurt me, I'll get stronger, and I'll rise up from the flames, and I'll hoist it proud and free. I'm America, don't tread on me. America is my name.
Today many of our young men and women are raising their right hand, and they're joining our great military to serve our country, to protect our freedom and our way of life. We honor them and we respect them. But let us not forget the four-legged soldier that's been fighting alongside our men and women in uniform for the last 100 years. In World War I, the United States did not have a dog program, but the French did. And they were trained in three major disciplines: security dog, a messenger dog, and a search and rescue dog, which they preferred to call them the ambulance dogs. Naturally, the security dog did exactly what it says. It would guard any kind of compound. The messenger dog required two handlers, one in the front lines and one at the headquarters. And the ambulance dog, he was trained to go out in between the trenches after there was a frontal attack, go out in no man's land, and find a wounded soldier, bring back an article of his clothing or anything he could carry, take it back to the stretcher bearers, then lead the stretcher bearers back to that wounded soldiers. They did that over and over and over again, and they saved thousands and thousands of lives. That's what they did in World War I. There's no real count on how many lives they saved, but you can imagine how many. Then in World War II come along. The United States thought, those dogs performed so well, maybe we should get involved with this. So on March 13, 1942, quartermaster would give them the directive, secure dogs for defense, and have them ready for combat in 12 months. Now that's a pretty tall order. Where are you going to get all these dogs? Where are you going to get the trainers? Where are you going to get the handlers? So they decided to form a little company called Dogs for Defense, and they sent a message out to the nation. And in 1942, the United States was very patriotic, and over 20,000 dogs were donated to the cause. However, all the Chihuahuas had to be sent back. Anything dealing with the military, you will find that there's a standard. So they've set up a standard of the size of the dog, the type of the dog, and the attitude of the dog. And the Marine Corps preferred the Doberman Pinscher, and the U.S. Army preferred the German Shepherd. So now they started there. Now, where are you going to get your trainers? Well, AKC sent a notice out to all their AKC members that were trainers, and several stepped up and donated their time and went to the different bases to start training these dogs. Now, where are you going to find the handlers? Well, those of you who've been here in the military will understand this. The sergeant called formation. He walks down the line. Young man, do you have a dog when you was home? Yes, Sergeant, I did. Great, stand over there. You just Young man, you raised on a farm? Yes, Sergeant, I was. Great, stand over there. That's how they got their handlers. I was just talking to a gentleman a minute ago and told me the same thing. He was volunteered. Anyways, so they got their handlers. Well, they started their training, and the training went very well. And in the spring of 1943, the first dog platoon was deployed to Guam. 2 weeks after their arrival, the casualty rating dropped 70%. Huge number, 70%. And the 550 missions led on that island of Guam, which was led by a war dog, not one was ambushed. Using their superior nose, eyes, and ears, they could deflect the enemy over 200 yards away. And they averted all kinds of ambushes. Not one was ambushed during that time. So they did their job. According to military records, the war dogs saved over 15,000 lives during World War II. That's a lot of lives. Then we go to Korea. Now Korea, from what we've seen, was a short war, or conflict, whatever you want to call it. Only one dog platoon was deployed. A dog platoon consists of about 28 dogs. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you a story. This happened about 3 or 4 years ago. It was Memorial Day. We was assembling at the American Legion parking lot, getting ready for the Memorial Day parade. And I had my German Shepherd with me. And a gentleman walked up behind me in his dress blue U.S. Marine Corps uniform, looking very sharp. And he said, "Can I pet your dog?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "I'd like to tell you a story." He said, "I was a combat veteran from the Korean War. And one morning, we had a patrol. And that patrol was led by a very large German Shepherd. And as we got within about 25 yards of this bridge, the dog alerted. Everybody went down on one knee. 2 men went off to the right flank. 2 went off to the left flank. They went and checked. They came back a few minutes later, reported it was all clear. So the patrol commander gave the order to move out. It took about 2 steps. The dog alerted again, sat down, wouldn't move. They knew something was really up. So 2 men went forward up on the bridge. And sure enough, right in the middle of that bridge was a tripwire connected to explosives. The dog was picking up the wire, singing in the breeze. That's what he was trained for. He said, "There isn't a day that doesn't go by. I don't think of that big German Shepherd. Not only did he save my life, but he saved the life of that whole patrol." Now that's a story you're hearing. That's a story that you'll hear over and over again, different circumstances. If you ever want to get on the internet and Google war dogs, you will see story after story of these handlers telling what happened and how these dogs performed. Then the next war we get into is Vietnam. Now, this is a different type of war. The dogs are trained on more disciplines now, the booby traps, the scout dog. And the scout dog was very important. And they had the security dogs, and they had the other type of dogs, but the scout dog, he was always on point when they went out on patrol. He was the first one out there. And again, using his superior nose and eyes and ears, he could deflect anything. So, I'm going to tell you another story. This is from a young man who's lived in Kentucky. One day he gets up and he decides, I'm going to join the Army. He's 18 years old, so he goes and signs up. He goes to Fort Campbell, Fort Knox for basic training. And during his basic training, some people came through looking for dog handlers. He thought, I love dogs. I like dogs. I think I'm going to sign up. So after his basic training, he went into the dog handling school. And he found he liked it. He enjoyed working with the dogs. So they hooked him up with a dog, and when a handler and a dog get together, they have roughly 7 days to bond. If they don't bond, then it's not a good marriage, and then they'll assign you a different dog. If the dog doesn't bond with you, they won't pay any attention to it. So they had to bond. Well, he bonded very well with his dog. Next thing he knew, he's on an airplane heading for Vietnam. He gets to the assembly area. 2 weeks later, he's assigned his unit, the 33rd Scout Dog Unit in Payload. He goes out to that unit. A week later, he gets his first assignment. They wanted to capture a VC for interrogation. So the intelligence group has set up an area where they thought it'd be a good spot to ambush a VC and bring him in. So they formed a detail, and they wanted a war dog to go with them. So about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they loaded up in a deuce and a half, and it took them within about a half a mile of the ambush zone. They lined the road waiting for a VC to come walking down. And they waited, and they waited. Well, pretty soon, it started getting dark. Now, if any of you have been in the jungle, you'll know when it gets dark, a lot of noises take place. There's a lot of critters making noises. Well, his dog turned around and faced the rear and alerted. And he thought, well, he's just alerting all that noise. So he grabbed his collar and gave him a yank and made him turn around. About 5 minutes later, the dog did the same thing. He turned around and alerted. He was about to grab his collar again, kind of scold him, and then he remembered something he was taught in dog handling school. The master trainer had said to them, trust your dog. Always trust your dog. So he sent a message to the commander, said, we better be alert, there could be something coming up behind us. Within about 5 minutes, a firefight broke out. The VC had seen them and was sneaking around behind them. The dog had picked them up. The firefight lasted about 7 minutes, pretty much took care of the VC except one was wounded, so they captured him, so basically the mission was accomplished. So they took him back for interrogation. But again, if it wasn't for that dog alerting them something's come up behind him, that whole issue could have been different. So he did his job. Again, according to military records, they saved 10,000 lives during that war. Now we're up to roughly 28,000 men and women who would not have come home if it wasn't for a dog. They saved their lives by alerting them and taking care of them. The dogs then went on to fight in Bosnia. They fought in Iraq. They fought in Afghanistan. Today they're fighting the war on terror. There's 2,800 teams scattered throughout the world today, guarding their soldiers, guarding whatever they're assigned to guard, and they're doing their job. Today they kind of record it a little differently. They say for every dog that's on tour during his tour duty, he will save 175 lives. You multiply that by 2,800, so you got to figure out how many lives they really save. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people are not aware of it. Earlier in the years, it considered it classified, so you wouldn't know about it. But today it's pretty open. But now I'm going to take you back a little bit to Vietnam. In Vietnam, which was a strange war to say the least, and those of you who have been into it would contest to that, the word came down. They're pulling out of Vietnam. Well, the morale went sky high. And all the handlers ran to the kennel. They grabbed their partner and said, "Buddy, we're going home, getting the hell out of this place." It was all happy. Hanging on to their buddy, battle. 2 weeks later, an order came down from Washington. Leave the dogs. They're like, you got to kid me. You can't leaving these dogs. They're my partner. They argued, but you're not going to argue too long in the military. They protested a little bit, but unfortunately the order stood. There was a bureaucrat sitting in Washington that felt it would be a logistical nightmare and expensive to bring these dogs home. And they were concerned about diseases bringing home from Vietnam, which is ludicrous. You just quarantine them for 14 days, all you got to do. Anyways, the order unfortunately stood. These handlers heartbroken, totally heartbroken for that to happen. 18 years ago, finally, Congress signed a law called Robbie's Law. Robbie's Law read that all retired military dogs were eligible for adoption. No longer would they be left behind. There's also another law came into effect just a couple years ago. If a military dog is stationed in Germany, we'll say, and the veterinarian corps retires that dog, he is now shipped back to his home base on American soil. Prior to that, it was a confusion mess, because once they retired the dog, he no longer was in the military. Crazy or not, he wasn't allowed on military vehicles or planes. Crazy rules that the government puts out there. Anyways, they come home on American base. Then, if the handler has the first opportunity to adopt his dog, and sometimes the dog will have 2 or 3 handlers, because the dog's tour could be up to 8 years, where the soldier's tour could be 2, 4, 3 or 4. So he will have multiple handlers. And they'll go down the list. Do you want to adopt this dog? He's retired now. Usually, about 80% of the time, a handler takes his dog. That 20% goes to Lackland Air Force Base to the adoption center. And the last time I checked with Lackland Air Force Base, at the center, there was over 1,500 people on the waiting list. Which that means every dog's going to get a forever home and live the rest of his life in peace. So that's good. Today, they view the dogs much differently. Unfortunately, they're still tagged as equipment. A lot of us in this arena that push for the war dogs have been lobbying to have their classification changed to canine members of the armed forces. That's what we'd like to have them called. But trying to get things to Washington is like pushing a rope. Very difficult, time consuming. And they haven't got time for stuff like this, all the other stuff going on. So anyways, but the dogs are looked at so differently today. If a dog is injured on the battlefield, he's medevaced out just like a regular soldier. He's totally taken care of. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Michigan War Dog Memorial. Who are we? What do we do? The memorial was an abandoned pet cemetery that we discovered in 2010. It had been established in 1936. It was abandoned in the middle 80s. And by the time we discovered it, you can imagine how much nature had taken over. It was a 2-acre plot. We discovered it. In the middle of it was a monument. It said War Dog, had some writing on it. So I went back to the VSOs that I belonged to in the area, and I said, let's form a detail, let's start cleaning this up. So we sent out a notice in the paper, sent out a notice to canine supporters, other military veterans. We set a date. And the date we set, on a Saturday, over 55 people showed up, which is great. When you ask for volunteers, you might get 2, you might get a bunch. We got a bunch. And we started cleaning it up. And we continued cleaning it up, one grid at a time. Then in 2012, we named it the Michigan War Dog Memorial. We went to the township, get permission to start internments again for service dogs only. And it was granted. Then we thought, none of us from the funeral home, how do you set up a burial for a dog? So we sent a message out to the DOD in Washington. What is a proper procedure to bury a military dog? Well, they didn't have it. So we said, we'll make our own. So we sat around the round table. There's a think tank, just throwing ideas in the middle and discussing it, going back and forth. Make a long story short, this is what we promote. We have a full-blown color guard. We have a bagpiper. We have 8 German shepherds escorting the handler and the ashes to the table of honor. We have an invocation read by a colonel in the Air Force. I usually read off the bio of the dog. We present the handler with a folded American flag. We play taps. We play Amazing Grace on the pipes. And those same 8 German shepherds have been trained to howl on command. It's called a canine salute to their fallen comrade. And they howl for 30 seconds. And that's when Barbara passes out the Kleenexes. But that's what we do for them. We started out with being mainly military dogs. Then we decided to add law enforcement. And then we sat down and said, well, wait, let's think about this. What about the working dogs? What about the search and rescue dogs that finds our lost children or seniors who've lost their way? How about the service dog that gives the handicapped more independence? How about the therapy dog? Comforts the ill and the elderly. The companion dog that gives the soldier with PTSD a sense of security. So we opened it up. And we said any canine that serves and protects us is eligible to be buried at our memorial. And so far we have buried 16 service dogs. And they all get a ceremonial burial. It's a final resting place with full honors. But we want to respect these dogs for what they do. Now, I'm just about ready to wrap it up. I got one last little video. I've set it up a little bit. This is the day we dedicated the Vietnam Canine Memorial Wall, which I didn't say anything about that yet. Because what happened to the dogs in Vietnam, we said we want to honor them and show our respect. We want them memorialized and never be forgotten for their service, sacrifice to our country, for what happened to them. So we started searching for all the names of all the dogs that were deployed to Vietnam. And when you get the names, you got to have their tattoo number because there's so many dogs named the same. And we were searching, and we called all over the United States, different groups, and we get partial lists, and we get a list for the state only. And we are getting a little frustrated. So I called another friend of mine, his name is John Bertle. He's the founder of the National War Dog Monument located at Lackland Air Force Base. He had to raise $2.1 million to put that there. He also had to go through the Pentagon, the DOD, Congress, to have that put on government property. But he had a lot of connections. So I called John and I said, John, I'm getting frustrated. I'm trying to find all these names. He said, well, what are you going to do with them? I said, I want to build a black granite wall. I want these dogs to have their own wall. It's going to be designed a little different than the one in Washington because that's soldiers. But we want them to have their own wall in Vietnam. He said, you're going to do that? And I said, yes, sir, I am. He said, well, I'm here to tell you I have those names. And I'm dead silent on the phone. I'm saying, whoa, you got all their names? He said, in alphabetical order. Wow. 4,234 dogs. And I said, how long have you had this list, John? He said, when I put up the monument, he said 2 years ago, he said, I had a second thought. I wanted to do the same thing you're doing. You've got plans to do. But I went back to my supporters and I says, John, I've already given you $2 million. You're done. No more money. So I've just been sitting here with it. But if you're going to do that, I'll share that with you. And he did. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
So, the dogs that were left behind, I mean, did they just leave them? Because it seems like it'd be more humane to have euthanized them. Did the Vietnam kill them? Did they just starve? Or does anybody even know?
Yeah, I know. They were given a choice. You can give your dog to the South Vietnamese Army or have them euthanized. That was your choices.
Oh, so they made a choice.
They had to make a choice. Probably 95% said there's no way I'm gonna let a BC, whether South or North, touch my dog. Because that was a real issue. The dogs were trained on the Vietnamese scent.
Right.
He wouldn't know North and South.
Right.
So you take the dog and give it to some South Vietnamese, you tear him up.
Right.
So most of the handlers walked into the tent with their dog and walked out with a collar and leash in hand.
Oh my God, that's so sad.
It was, yes, difficult. So, yes.
I did some research on the Vietnam War dog, and something that I found said that if the veteran had enough money, they could get their dog home.
No.
That's completely impossible?
No, the dog doesn't belong to the veteran. The dog belongs to the government.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, you're not gonna go to your commander and offer him money to take a dog, and it just doesn't work. What you're probably referring to, today, when I said to you a minute ago, I said they have a new law, it says all dogs will come home. All MWDs, military working dogs. But there are
No, it was
CW dogs.
Vietnam,
I don't know, I have no knowledge of that.
right. So you're saying no dogs came home from Vietnam?
204.
Oh, and they were euthanized?
No, 204 came home, all the rest were left behind, which was euthanized.
Okay, the 204 came home then?
204 came home.
Okay.
Now, how that happened was, I told you before that the handlers and the men kind of protested about them doing that. They did agree to do a trial run. So they sent, by lottery, 204 dogs home and quarantined them for 14 days. And it turns out there was nothing wrong. But the government still said it's still a mess, order stands. That's how those 204 came home. Otherwise, they would have been euthanized as well.
So did they go to homes where they adopted out?
I have no idea. I don't know what happened to them.
Were these dogs targeted because of their value by the enemy?
Yes, they had a bounty on them. They had a bounty on them. Yes.
Where was the 2-acre plot of land that was established in 1936 and the memorial that you found? Where geographically is that?
It's just east of South Lyon on the corner of Milford Road and 11 Mile.
Is that where is the wall then?
Right there.
It's right there. Tell me again where it is.
It's a little east of South Lyon and Lyon Township on the corner of Milford Road and 11 Mile.
Thank you.
It's about 2 miles south of New Hudson, 2 miles south of I-96 on Milford Road. You can't miss it. You got American flags flying everywhere. Any other questions? Well, again, I appreciate your attention, and if you want, if you can, you feel you'd like to help us out, we've still got things to do out there. We still got improvements to make. We do have a donation jar. If you can help us out, we greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much.